Hi everybody and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about photos and pictures, but not taking them, but kind of what we do in them.
Oh, you mean posing like a model?
Yes. Yes, a bit of that.
Point at your watch.
Bit of that.
Point at the thing over there.
Exactly. Do you enjoy having photos taken of you? No,
I would rather go to the dentist.
Okay.
Well, maybe not rather than go to but no, I don't really, I'm not a big camera guy. I don't take a lot of pictures. I don't pose in a lot of pictures. I guess when I graduated from university, I did that thing where you have your, the gown.
Degree,
and I did it there.
Wedding photo?
No.
I never did any proper official.
Never did the official ones. I saw a guy and he was standing by a highway near Elan with a saxophone, and I don't think he played saxophone, and it was August, and he was wearing a silver suit, and I kind of thought, I don't really want to do that. I think there's other things I could do. So no, I don't really pose a lot, but one good thing is that I think for most people these days, posing in that formal kind of way is a very unusual thing. We probably have more pictures taken of us now than any time in history, but in most of them we want to kind of look natural, right?
I kind of want to do the politician pose. I want that one.
Oh, that, or how about this one? I like that one
politician
too.
pose.
That's a very sincere one. But back in time, people didn't have cameras. Having your picture painted was actually a really big deal, and so people would think a lot about how they would pose and stand in these pictures. Maybe one of two or three pictures, one of two or three pictures that they ever had taken in their life or painted in their life.
Right, and there's a very famous pose that was popular for a certain period of time, where they would take their hand and kind of put it inside their waistcoat.
You can't do it. I can do it. I can do it.
Yeah, like that. So today we're going to learn about that pose and all the stories about it and behind it. Let's read on.
Keeps your hand warm.
Reading.
The story behind the famous hand in waistcoat pose. Take a look at some 18th century portraits, and you might notice that the subjects all look respectable and noble. One technique was employed by painters to achieve this. It's called the hand in waistcoat pose. You can see this pose in many famous paintings of the period. The hand in waistcoat pose became popular in the 1700s in Britain as a way to show men as strong and bold, but also modest. The pose came about in a time of political conflict between Britain and France. It was meant as a contrast to the flamboyant French character. However, the best-known subject to be shown in the hand in waistcoat pose was actually a Frenchman, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon's personal artist, Jacques-Louis David, made several paintings of him in this way. The Emperor Napoleon, in his study at the Tuileries, is considered the most famous. The hand in waistcoat pose continued to be used into the 19th and even 20th centuries. As a result, it appears in photographs as well as paintings. Other famous subjects include George Washington, Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Joseph Stalin.
So the article begins by saying, take a look at some 18th century portraits, and you might notice that the subjects all look respectable and noble. Okay. That's how you'd want to look, right? That's how you want people to think of you. Let's look at those two adjectives. The first is respectable. If you are respectable, then most people believed you are proper, you are correct, you're well-behaved. Society in general thinks, yes, that person, we should respect them. They behave well. They do the right thing. They are, they live a good life. They have a good job. They benefit to the community.
Okay, the kind of person you'd want your kids to grow up to be or to look up to. And if you're really respectable and probably rich and fancy and maybe even have some kind of family connection to the royal family or something, you might even be noble. But we can also use noble just to talk about the kind of person who always does the right thing. They're always honest. They always, stick to their word. They always follow the rules and that kind of thing. Similar to respectable, but maybe even a little fancier. They went to all the right schools and have all those special family connections. Kind of a very respectable VIP in some kind of way.
So a lot of people look like this, but how and why? Well, the article says one technique was employed by painters to achieve this. Like Mike said, people would stand for painters and the painters would draw them and then paint them. And to make these people, even if they weren't respectable and noble, at least look it, they used a particular technique. A technique is a method of doing something using some kind of special skill that you've learned and developed over time. We've done lessons in the past about writing techniques, things you can do when you're writing to achieve a certain effect. A painting technique. How can I make this area look light and this area look dark? What can I do while I'm painting to make that guy look noble? We talk about cooking techniques, the best way to cook a steak or the best way to bake bread or make a really fancy cake. They all use techniques. Here's another example. Mary's diving coach showed her a new technique to help her improve.
Oh, okay, a new way of diving to make her spins tighter and her entry to the water cleaner. This is what, of course, coaches do with athletes. One of the best things they can do is share new techniques. And in this case, remember, we're talking about art, and more specifically, we're talking about painting. So painting techniques. A person who paints, especially if it's their job or they do it in a very serious way, is called a painter, right? So you would hire a painter to paint your portrait. We also would use this today, actually more commonly, not for the artist type, but for the person who would come and paint the walls of your home or paint the outside of your building. That would also be a painter, a house painter or something. But this type of painter, we're thinking more like the artists that we think of, Van Gogh and Rembrandt and people like that. And yeah, a long time ago, before cameras, if you had the money, if you were very noble and respectable and rich, you might hire a portrait painter, a portrait being a picture of a person, in order to, record your family and, have a picture of grandfather that you can keep there. And of course, these painters would want to do really, really good jobs, make the paintings look just like the people, achieve some kind of level of professionalism and techniques that make their paintings really special.
Yeah, and to get people looking good, to achieve this goal, they would use techniques. And achieve means to reach a goal, to get a desired result. Right. I want to do this, I want to achieve this thing, and when you've done it, you say, I have achieved it, I've completed it. We usually use it about difficult stuff. You don't say, I brushed my teeth this morning, I've achieved something.
That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, I put on my clothes, I achieved getting dressed. Okay, now we use it for accomplishing a difficult goal, something that's a challenge, something that isn't easy. For example, Miles has worked really hard to achieve the position of general manager of the company.
Okay.
So what is this technique that they used?
Well, it's called the hand in waistcoat pose. The hand in waistcoat pose. That's what they called this technique and this style of posing in these old paintings. Okay, so this word pose is a word we can use to talk about the position you put your body in when someone is taking your picture. Models will have to learn how to pose in order to kind of show the clothes that they're wearing very well. You might pose with your friends in a different way. We can use it as a verb. To put your body in that position is to pose, and then that position you are holding, that is a pose. So it's the same type of idea. We're we're either doing it or we're talking about what we're doing. But in all of these cases, generally for a picture, for a painting, for some kind of performance of some kind where people will look at you, you want to put your body in the nicest, most interesting, most attractive position that you can. You want your pose to be just perfect. For example, the tourists struck poses in front of Rome's famous Trevi fountain. Maybe some of them were, doing things with their fingers. Maybe some of them were standing there like proud Romans. Who knows? But these are the positions they put their bodies in to take that wonderful picture.
So this pose we see in the article, you can see this pose in many famous paintings of the period. The period means that 18th century,
right.
That time 1700 to maybe
1800s.
Late into the mid to late 1800s. Yep. And these are in paintings, so a painter is a person who paints kind of as a career. A painting is a picture that is made with paints.
That's right. The hand in waistcoat pose became popular in the 1700s in Britain as a way to show men as strong and bold, but also modest. Okay, so as you're strong and you're bold, you're posing like you're ready for action, like you're a soldier or something like that. But you're also modest. Maybe you're covering your fancy rings or something by hiding them. You don't want to show people how rich you are. I'm not quite sure what they were trying to achieve with that, but they definitely did want to look bold. Anyone who's very powerful will want to look bold because it shows you're confident. You're not afraid of anyone. You're brave in some kind of way. You're not the kind of person who goes, I don't know, please leave me alone. No, you're the kind of person, I can take charge. Hey, everyone, follow me. So that kind of thing. And of course, back then, it wasn't your average baker who was posing for portraits. These were kings, dukes, lords, generals, admirals, powerful people who should be seen to be powerful and should be seen to be very bold, confident, brave, and not afraid of much. For example, it was very bold of Muriel to move from Kenya to Iceland in order to become a reindeer farmer. That's a pretty bold move.
Yep, that's confident.
Good on you, Muriel.
So they're also looking modest. Someone who's modest doesn't show off what they have. They don't show off what they can do. They're fairly humble about it. So this pose, it showed they were strong and confident, but not like crazy, like, hey, I'm the man,
I'm
kind
number
of
one.
Confident. Yeah, that would be going too far.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that, and that's all to do with what's going on at the time in Europe.
Interesting. It says the pose came about in a time of political conflict between Britain and France. So basically
forever.
Wars were going on. This is probably the Revolutionary Wars going into the Napoleonic Wars between Britain and France. And yeah, this is a time when we think of a lot of generals and kings were fighting wars, leading armies and stuff like that. So there were probably lots of these people around who wanted to have these wonderful portraits taken, but they didn't want to look too proud, that they did want to look powerful. So the hand and waistcoat pose was decided as kind of a cool pose to have at that time. And we use that phrasal verb to come about to talk about things that kind of happen over time because of things that happened before. So events happen, stuff goes on, and then other things change or other things start to appear. For example, we could say the rising food prices that we have now came about because of the Russian war in Ukraine and also as the world is opening up from COVID. So those events happened and it led to other events happening. There's a kind of a connection, a line here between these things that happened in the past, causing things to happen in the present and the future. Things come about because they happen or occur.
So this was to do with a political conflict. This pose came about due to a political conflict. A conflict is some kind of argument, disagreement, fight, or war. And a political conflict would be to do with politics, with governments. This is when France was throwing off its kings and saying, we shall be ruled by the people.
Right.
And the UK or Britain was saying, no, we'll have a king, thank you very much. And they argued about it because the kings wanted to stay kings in Britain. They didn't want the people overthrowing them. And that led to a political conflict about government and how to govern, and eventually wars. Here's another way we could use political. I'm reading a really interesting political history of North and South Korea. So not about the people, the food, the countryside. It's the political history, the history of the governments, the leaders, how they interacted.
Okay, and there was actually a political element to this pose. So the English people were posing in this sort of modest yet bold hand and waistcoat pose, and not only did they think it kind of looked cool to stand like that, of course, and we read it was meant as a contrast to the flamboyant French character. You know, those French, they're always being flamboyant. Well, actually, I can think of a portrait. I think it's Louis XIV. It was maybe, 50, 60 years before. And he's standing there and he's got his leg out. He's got this beautiful cane. He's got rings on his fingers and his shiny silk clothes, And then you think of the British guys, not so many jewels and diamonds, standing in a kind of a little more controlled, less sort of, hey, everyone, look at me, look how rich I am. That was the contrast that they were trying to go for. And a contrast is basically a state of being really different from something else. When you contrast things, that's the verb, it's kind of like comparing, showing how these things are different. And that is a contrast. If there's a big difference, there's a big contrast or big differences between these two things. And so the English style was a little more calm, a little quieter, and certainly not as flamboyant as that French style as shown by their kings and people like that.
Yeah, if you are flamboyant, if that's your personality, you are attracting attention because of your confidence, your style, and your somewhat over-the-top behavior.
Can be.
Yeah, if a lot of actors, performers, musicians, they will dress in a flamboyant way. Look at me, the star is here.
Okay.
Rather than a bit more modest, a bit more calm. So that was the contrast. And British people wouldn't wanted to think, that's going too far. What the French do, we're British. We do things in a different way.
Interesting. And there we also had the term character. Now here it's not a person in a movie or in a story. That's a character in a story. Now here we're talking about basically a person's personality and the qualities that make up that personality. If you're flamboyant, if you're modest, if you're proud, if you're brave, if you're kind, these types of words that we use to describe when someone says, what are they like as a person? Not how tall they are, what color's their hair, no, about their personality, their emotions, what goes on in their mind, that kind of thing. We're talking about their character, the kind of person that they are, not necessarily just how they look. For example, Malcolm has a very friendly character, and that's one of the things that makes him a great salesman. I think great salesmen need to have a friendly character, have a patient character, have a calm character, that kind of thing. That's the type of person they are.
Right. However, it's time to introduce something interesting. So this is a British pose.
Right. I'm modest, I'm bold, blah, blah, blah. I'm from
the British
London.
are doing it.
Okay.
But the article says, however, the best known subject to be shown in the hand in waistcoat pose was actually a Frenchman, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Napoleon.
Yeah, of course, the Emperor of France from the very early years of the 19th century for some 10 or 12 years.
That's right. Napoleon's personal artist, Jacques-Louis David, made several paintings of him in this way. That's true. A lot of the famous paintings you've seen of Napoleon were painted by Jacques-Louis David, and in some of them, especially some of the most famous, he does have his hand in the waistcoat. He's copying that English pose.
Interesting. The article says, the Emperor Napoleon in his study at the Tuileries, that's the name of the painting. The Tuileries is kind of like a place where the government was at the time in France. It's a palace, yeah. The Emperor Napoleon in his study at the Tuileries is considered the most famous.
Is that the one where he's kind of slouched in the chair?
Yeah, kind of leaning on the table or something like that, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
So let's look at the language in focus for today based on that sentence. So here we're using the phrase something is considered something. We can also say something is considered to be something. And this is used to show either a general opinion about a certain thing or a person's specific opinion about this thing. We can use other verbs in place of considered, like it's deemed to be something, it's believed to be something, it's felt or thought to be something. We can also use similar words like regarded as and other verbs like that. All of it is used to show opinions, beliefs, and feelings. Now, in the article, we're using the passive voice, which means we don't need to say whose opinion is being given. It's not important. We're just saying it is considered by most people, by many people, to be the most famous picture. Here's another example. Many people consider Cristiano Ronaldo to be the best soccer player in the world. Or in passive, Cristiano Ronaldo is considered to be the best soccer player in the world.
And then we read the hand in waistcoat pose continued to be used into the 19th and even 20th centuries in the same way that pop stars are still doing moves that Michael Jackson made famous.
Yep.
Great men who came after Napoleon for many years continued to kind of copy the cool dude Napoleon who did this. And actually, it also, in an interesting way, this pose carried over from an older technology to a much more modern technology, but the pose was the same.
Yeah, which is why the article says, as a result, the pose, appears in photographs as well as paintings.
Yeah, photographs only started to become 1830, 1840, and of course going on to our modern era. But you will see people from just the past 100 years in the same pose, even though the pose started more than 200 years ago. Other famous subjects include George Washington, Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Joseph Stalin. That's right, the Russian leader during World War II. So maybe a guy who was alive when your grandparents were still, or great-grandparents were still around, they were still posing in that hand in waistcoat pose. I should do it more. Should bring it back.
Yeah, well, we'll find out more about the history of this pose and a few other ideas about it tomorrow. But right now, let's go to today's For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So today's question is, what kinds of poses do you think are popular now?
Ooh.
I mean, the V sign,
people
certainly
still do the fingers.
in Taiwan has never really gone out of fashion.
That's a popular one. People do the heart.
Yeah,
right? Or they
or
can do
the Korean
little,
heart
the
thing.
finger heart thing.
Yeah,
and of course,
still around.
The thing under the face, you know, you can do things like that. Also, I think some of the because we take so many photographs, especially people who like Instagram, we do other poses, but without our whole body. And I'm thinking of the people who like will hold out something and shoot the background, or they have all their friends reach in with their glasses when they're at dinner and they take a picture up above. Now it's still a pose, but you're just using your hands or your arms or other body parts. So but those are very common.
And like almost any time, if I ever go to the beach in Taiwan, every 5 minutes you can see a group of people all jumping in the air while someone takes a photo.
Right. I guess,
they never stop.
That's kind of a pose because they often do the same sort of position in the air, right? With your legs tucked up and your hands above your head or something like that.
So that continues to be popular.
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of others. I'm sure TikTok has numerous ones.
If you don't have an answer to the question, open your TikTok or Instagram now, and in about 30 seconds, you'll have many good examples of popular poses that people are using now. But we're going to have more on this topic tomorrow. So come back and join us for more about the story behind the famous hand in waistcoat pose.
Yep. See you then. Bye for now.
Take care.
Vocabulary Review.
Technique. Linda learned a new technique for solving this kind of math problem in class today. Achieve. After much hard work and practice, Lisa achieved her goal of running 5 kilometers in 40 minutes. Pose. Gary asked the model to change her pose so that the light would shine through her hair. Bold. Everyone said Larry was bold to point out the teacher's mistake in the middle of class. Political. The KMT and the DPP are the best-known Taiwanese political parties. Character. Politeness is an important part of the Japanese character, so it's rare to see a rude Japanese person.
智慧小补帖
Respectable. Noble. Modest. Contrast. Flamboyant.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作。活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net